Cody,
How's it going?
welcome to the Mountain Bike Shed.
I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm really glad you're here as well. You run Wheels Up MTB, Wheels Up Enduro, Wheels Up XC. You run camps all over the St. Louis area. You kind of do everything, youth mountain biking as well as private coaching, and adult camps and adult private coaching and all those good things. So I'm excited to have you here because it's one of the biggest things that comes up in the shop, especially with younger people. Also with new mountain bikers, is there's not a lot of information out there on how to mountain bike or how to really get into the sport and enjoy it safely and kind of learn everything they need. We try to do our best in here. People know I'll chat people's ears off when they come in about everything they should do. But that only goes so far. And typically I point people to you, to the wheelsupmtb.com website. That seems to be the best place for most people to find information. How would you sum up what you do? Would that make sense?
It's a lot. I mean, obviously we start off as a youth program. Been doing mountain bike coaching. This is what, I guess, year 17.
Okay.
I have kids that now have
17
years.
Holy
Been
smokes.
working. Some of the oldest kids I have now, they're married and getting ready to have their own kids, which is kind of crazy. But it's really exciting. Obviously, we've grown into doing more adult programming. Have been running youth camps, rides, skills clinics for a long time. Now we do adult clinics. We even do more advanced clinics for like jumping and dropping. Have some new stuff that we're getting ready to debut with, like a full-out drop class, modular drops that I can set up just about anywhere, which is really cool. Along with our airbags and all that stuff. But really,
it's pretty crazy how much your camps have changed just even over the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, it really has. It's really been
It's about with the sport.
Well, the big focus for me is safety, right? Mountain biking, you read any waiver, inherently mountain biking is dangerous, and can be difficult for a lot of
That's
people.
why we like it.
I mean, I like to think so, but for the beginner rider,
Scary. It's downright
scary. It's downright scary in a lot of cases, and to be able to learn in a progressive, safe way has really been, my focus. Is to try to do something. There's great mountain bike instructors, throughout the region, here locally. I'm not the only one, but the one thing that I really looked at is, well, how do we create an environment to help more people get into it without a barrier, right?
Yeah.
As far as the safety, right? And that's where, we have a controlled environment. We're in a grass field. Even if we have features, there's no trees, there's no things to run into. We really minimize the exposure, and start in a small way, right? So, we're really fundamentally based. So we spend a lot of time working on core elements like bike and bike separation, wheel lifts, and all that stuff to, build up to riding on the features, whether they're drops or jumps, skinnies, whatever we're using depending on the class. But really the big part of it is the commitment that I've spent to either build or buy basically a mobile mountain bike park. And that's really like, it's this concept, like you think of people think of mountain bike parks, and right, there are these huge spanses. I mean, we have a mountain bike park right behind us here at Eureka Mountain Bike Park, and you realize how much space and how much money goes into building one of those. I mean, you of all people, that very well.
Yeah.
Obviously helping to get the one here in Eureka started and up and going. But basically, I'm trying to build a mobile mountain bike park that we can take a jump, from literally 8-10 inches up to 8 feet and change everything about it to where if you're starting day one or you've been riding for 20 plus years, you can come in and you can learn in a safe way.
Yeah, and I know why the jump clinic, first off, is, I think, huge. I think it's you set up, when you run one of your clinics, you do one out here in Eureka, right across 109 from the shop. So on days you have it set up, everybody comes in here and then asks us, like, oh, is that your blah, 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 this and that? So it's very noticeable, and that was kind of the whole intention behind opening the shop to do the Eureka Mountain Bike Park. Was I was like, all right, I know that, you know, I love mountain biking. It's hard for me to convince people to do it, and especially if we want to get young people into it, and even, you know, older people like to have fun too. We need some like drops and jumps and stuff like that. Well, a lot of risk can be mitigated if you just simply know proper body positioning, proper technique, and you know how to lift your front wheel and how to lift your rear wheel. Like, these are all things that new riders don't have any idea about. You know, like the lifting the front wheel thing is the biggest thing I go over with people if they're buying an entry-level mountain bike, getting their first mountain bike. I try to at least get them that tip out there, because it's like, if I can tell them how to lift their front wheel over a root and a rock when they're on the trail, I know they're going to enjoy their rides, are going to become 10 to 20% more enjoyable, and then they're more apt to keep riding and keep having fun. So that's always a big conversation here in the shop. You know, we do a lot to kind of ask questions to see, you know, where people are going to be riding, what their kind of goals are. These all are things that go into a bike purchase. So when somebody buys a new bike, you know, part of that conversation, okay, you need a helmet, you need gloves, you need chain lube, you need, you know, blah, blah, blah. You need training, you need to talk with somebody, because you can watch YouTube videos all day, and, you know, it's good to get some kind of base knowledge from that, and it can be really helpful. But actually being out there and having a coach, somebody with experience, someone who's trained hundreds of people or possibly even thousands. Do you think you've trained thousands of participants at this point?
Probably getting pretty close to that, yes, for sure. Yeah.
So, yeah, you know, having your expertise, actually have them watch and say, okay, here's what you're doing, and then being able to do that. I mean, I took a level 1 course 5-6 years ago when I did my certification, and I mean, there's still stuff in that course that Caleb had taught it at the time, bracket, with guided path, and there's still stuff I repeat to myself on every ride that, you know, he tells me. So then that's why I try and install to my customers. It's like, you know, if you go to a camp, even more experienced riders, you know, it's good to get instruction, because you're gonna pick up little things that you're gonna use on every single ride multiple times, and that compounds over every ride. And I mean, it's amazing the difference it can make. It's better than any upgrade on your parts on your bike, is upgrading your own skills and being able to do that.
Well, and I think a lot of new mountain bikers, and even people that are starting out or more intermediate, really don't quite realize like the investment in their education and how much that can influence their riding experience. You know, I look at skiing. You know, like skiing is another, you know, there's a price barrier. You know, skis are expensive, or going and getting lift tickets. But how many people you know that have skied and they'll go spend good money to go get ski instruction on their trip?
Right.
You know why they do that? Most people, they want to optimize their ski experience. They want to feel more comfortable. They want to have somebody guide them. That's one of the things that I hope that, you know, is, you know, Wheels Up is developing more programming and helping more riders, is get that, you know, mindset of, hey, if I can go through and have a real good understanding on what I'm trying to achieve and doing it the right way, like you would on a ski trip, well, now you're going to go out, you're going to have more fun, you're going to have less issues. And in a lot of cases, it's going to be less expensive, because you're not going to have an emergency room bill, you know, which I hate to say that. I mean, that's plenty of people go on great trips. We got places like Arkansas, I mean, Howler, Shepherd Mountain, and, you know, they're beginner, intermediate bikers, and they want to go ride places that have advanced trails, and they're getting themselves hurt.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not because, you know, necessarily they don't know how to ride a bike. You know, there is that certain amount of stipulation, like, oh, it's like riding a bike. Well, guess what? Mountain biking, really, in a lot of cases, couldn't be any further from riding a bike, because just riding a bike out on the pavement or a paved trail, well, you're not trying to go over obstacles, ride with speed, you know, and putting yourself at, you know, in some cases, some pretty severe risk, you know, and a big thing for me, I mean, we got Riley over there, who's one of your, you know, I dare I say great kids, because he's always on the fence of whether he's going to be here or not. We're joking on the podcast. So if you watch it, I'm sure you understand.
Yes.
Riley's a longtime Wheels Up.
If we don't get to 400 subscribers, I'm going to fire him.
Yes, wherever that screen is, 400. Do it for Riley. Riley's been riding with me, it's what, fourth year now, and we go back to preparation, right? With mountain biking.
So Riley started doing your weekly rides, and that's something that's really interesting to me, because Riley and a lot of the other kids that are pretty good riders now as they're reaching 15 and 16 started that way. And that's a question we get a lot in the shop. Parents come in, they're buying a 24-inch bike for their kid. They're like, oh yeah, his buddies ride up the Eureka Mountain Bike Park, or, their buddies ride bikes, they want to get into it, what bike does he need, blah, blah, blah. And some of them aren't quite old enough to get on the enduro team or to even do NICA yet. So for parents like that, you do those weekly rides, and that seems to be like a really key component. Because I used to ride with my daughter all the time, and when she was 8, she would listen to me, and she's always, been pretty good about that. But there's just a certain point where kids, no matter, what mom or dad says, they're just going to ignore it and get frustrated and whatever else. I think having a weekly ride that parents can take the kids to is important. What are, like, if your kid or let's say your kid doesn't even have a mountain bike right now, but he says he's shown an interest in it, what steps do they go to the weekly ride with you, or what steps would they take first?
Well, so I do have bikes that I can rent out. So if you have a kid that doesn't have a bike, obviously reach out to me. They can come, they can try out a ride.
Cool.
And usually I don't charge them for a bike rental or anything like that. My goal is to get the kids into the sport, right? In the first case, that's one way of doing it. But having a bike that the kid can ride and get used to, and get fitted to him properly, that's a big deal, right? Obviously, you run a bike shop, fitting and being on a proper size bike is super important.
Yeah, I was just talking to a friend about that this morning, because their son's just starting to ride, and she was like, oh yeah, he's super nervous going downhill. So my first question was, well, where'd you get the bike from? Because, if it's a bike shop bike, if it's a higher end bike, it's going to have adjustability. So we can go in there and we can adjust the brake levers, and we can drop. It's probably going to have a threadless steer, so we can move the stem down. We can shrink a bike down to a kid to properly fit them, or grow it if we need to. And then, and that's kind of, just my bike shop pitch and why you buy a bike shop bike. Especially once we get to the 24-inch level, it's super important to get a good quality bike. Because if the components aren't working right, the bike's going to feel janky, it's going to feel shaky. It's just, it's not going to hold up. They're not going to have fun riding it, above and beyond it being heavy. But the biggest thing is, a kind of nicer 24-inch bike is going to allow us to adjust levers and do a bunch of different things to really tailor that bike. Because the more confident they are, the more they're going to try, and the more they're going to realize that they're capable of doing a lot of things they didn't think were possible.
Well, and you talk about 24-inch wheels. So we are relaunching the Mighty Monster Mondays, which is our Monday ride. We finally should have approval to start that here. We're going to ride, that'll be August, September, and October. So we ride basically every Monday night. You can reach out to wheelsupmtb.com or email me at Wheels Up MTB. We have a newsletter that we're going to relaunch for the fall, which will be cool. So that'll have like all our youth programming. It's all STL programming, so that way if you go to the website, you might see stuff in Kansas City or California, wherever I'm at. But the nice thing about the newsletter is it has all the St. Louis information, the weekly stuff, and it's typically updated every Sunday throughout the fall. So excited to bring that back, get kids on bikes. Usually we start off, try to get a kid on a 24-inch wheel. So usually that's really, we don't base it off of age, we base it off of size. Because when a kid graduates from a 20-inch to a 24, it's a huge difference in rollability and efficiency. So they're able to ride that much further and hang with the 26s or the little bit bigger kids. So usually that's anywhere from first to second grade. It's kind of like that starting range. So first, second grade, try to get into a 24-inch wheel. I do make exceptions. If I have a rider, he's one of those
I know we've sent
20-inchers that come in and they ride a lot, and I'll let them in, right? But a kid that's just getting on a bike, that doesn't necessarily like ride much, 20-inch could be a little bit tough for them. They might have to wait. I know a big topic that I get asked a lot of, that I do regularly, and I really don't do the best job of promoting it, is I work with a lot of special needs kids and kids of all ages, just learning how to ride a bike. That's, I have some industry tricks and different ways that I can, help teach riders how to ride a bike. It's obviously focused on balance, and I have 100% success rate. I've been doing it for years. That's even including every special need kid I've ever worked with. Sometimes it's 1 or 2 sessions, and certain kids it could be 5, 6 sessions, depending on the kid's needs, right? And I don't really even just say that for kids. You'd be surprised on how many adults I've recently taught how to ride a bike as well.
Yeah, see that.
And that can be a very empowering thing. I worked, not this summer, but last summer, I worked with a really sweet lady, 65, never rode a bike, not at all, in her entire life.
What'd she think after like her first ride?
Oh, literally it was awesome because, now it took a little bit, right? And it took commitment from her to not only go through and us do, because we usually do an hour lesson, and we go through stuff and we'll work through it, and then I ask them to practice. And then we'll come back once they've reached the next stage, right? So there's a process to it. So once they've reached the next stage, then we can progress forward. And it took us about six lessons, but she was very confident, right? We took our time, right? And we ride within her ability, and it was one of those at the end. She was just like, she was literally in tears, like, that's why we do this. That was a life-changing experience, something she'd always wanted to do, just throughout her life, never had that opportunity. And now, she lives right down the street from Creve Coeur Lake. She can go ride, and, is she going to be a mountain biker jumping off ramps and stuff? No, but she can go do something recreational that's going to improve her life, be healthier, and, not necessarily be the status quo of just like going for a walk, right? So and really she had grandchildren that were learning how to ride, so she wanted to learn how to ride with her grandchildren, which was even cooler. Like, when you think about like that there's really like no age barrier. I always jokingly say, like, when somebody comes to me, and I'm sure you've probably heard it, people coming in like, oh, I'm too old to mountain bike. And that's when I say, well, how old are you? And you know what I hear a lot of? Oh, I'm 55, I'm 60. And I'm like, and I laugh at them. I'm like, who's my oldest client? And I'm going to try to get Simeon. Super good dude. Lives over in Carbondale, Illinois. Simeon's, early 80s.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
We're talking like a gentleman who's ridden most of his life, and learning how to ride mountain bikes. Can want to learn how to handle those rocky situations, right? He's ridden more miles than I have in my entire lifetime because he's twice as old as I am. But talk about somebody who's wanting to, even at an older age, learn how to take that next step and then broadening and expanding his horizons on a bike, which is pretty cool.
And if you think about it, mountain biking for older folks probably is safer. Choose the right trails and whatnot, but there's less distractions. You're out riding around on a public trail. People got dogs. There's kids running all over the place. You have to suddenly stop. Scares me to death to think about doing that.
Or you're riding, or you're riding on a pavement. You're riding on the road.
Right, just hard surface.
I can tell you from all the years of riding on the road, like how many times I've been close to getting hit,
on the road itself,
So in a lot of ways, mountain biking can be really safe and a lot of fun, and get somebody out on a bike, in a different way.
Yeah, and you got to think, like, to get onto a mountain bike, like we had family, they just came in, got a couple $600 mountain bikes. That's basically the price of entry. You really probably should spend a little bit more. So maybe you're spending somewhere around $1,000 for a bike and your gear. I think that, also factor in that you need to get some training too is going to make a huge difference to ensure you get to keep riding that bike and enjoy it. It's really interesting. It's interesting with you because, you've been in the bike industry for a long time. You started how old were you when you first got a job at a bike shop?
So I've been working in the bike industry. This is year 21.
21.
21 years. So,
So-
I have 15 years inside a bike shop,
Okay.
and then 6 years in outside sales.
Right.
So,
What did you do when you started working at a bike shop?
so I literally started working Fridays, just wrenching on bikes. I started with a Mark over at Baldwin Cycles.
Building bikes. You had you building bikes?
Building
or
bikes,
doing
just
tune-ups?
doing tune-ups, stuff like that. It was one of those, I hate to say it, I was breaking a lot of bikes. I jokingly say this. Most people don't realize, like they see Cody Jones, mountain bike instructor, or the kids that ride with me. Well, I mean, I'd say it at one point, I was a 20-year-old kid that liked to bike, and I destroyed a lot of bikes.
You only calmed down maybe, and I don't even know if you've calmed down now, but maybe in the last like 3 years or so. Because I remember when I first met you, it would have been 5 years ago or so. You were still pretty young and wild, so.
Well, everyone.
You probably still are, but.
It's all relative, right?
Didn't you just get, or no, that was a baseball injury.
No, I've had that knee injury twice. Two hyperextensions in the right knee is,
But it wasn't a bike crash.
No, actually so you're thinking of the one I stepped off and did a high ankle sprain last winter. That was bad.
Your latest.
That's baseball coach Cody. I have to put a different hat on for that.
Sure.
So,
But yeah, well, to kind of speak to your experience with things, so, I mean, you do, you're a baseball coach for your kids' select teams?
Yeah,
or?
so I coach a 13U select baseball team with the Tigers here out of Chesterfield.
Nice.
I played high school, played Parkway South, played over at Flow Valley Community College. I coached 5 years of Legion baseball.
How old were you when you started working at the bike shop?
So I was 20.
20.
20.
So you were in college then?
Yep. So I started when I was working in college, and then.
So you went to college here in St. Louis?
Yep. I went to Flow Valley, and then I graduated from UMSL.
Okay.
I have a degree in art education. I have a bachelor's in fine arts and photography, and a minor in art history.
Okay.
So I like art. I know it seems weird, mountain bike instructor, artist.
Well,
So-
I mean, I think that's what draws a lot of us into the woods, and I think why it's important, especially to get the young people out into the woods, is the kind of just natural beauty that's out there, and it is something to see, and a lot of people don't get to experience that, which is kind of crazy. But that's something that always goes into my pitch, especially with parents when their kids are buying a mountain bike, because like you said, you got to kind of see that sparkle in that lady's eye when she learned to ride a bike. I see that with like the young men and stuff, because I ask a lot of qualifying questions of kind of what the intents of, even with an 8-year-old kid. It's like, well, where do you plan on riding? Well, I will ride with my friends. Well, where do your friends ride? So we find out they're going to be in the neighborhood, on the trails, whatever it may be. And a lot of those trail kids, you can kind of see the sparkle in their eye when they're finally leaving with the bike. And that's why we get into heavy with the coaching, and I try to push them towards Wheels Up. Whether it's the Monday night rides or if they're a little bit older, looking into, maybe getting on the enduro or telling them about the kids on the enduro team. So with that, when they're buying a new bike, they may not be there, but I get to use Riley and Gavin and, all those guys as examples, and I'll call them out and be like, tell them about Wheels Up, tell them about Wheels Up.
Well, I mean, it really goes into like how diverse, of programming that we do at Wheels Up.
Sorry.
No,
I
you're
meant
good.
to say, because you're a teacher, that's really nice for parents to know.
Yes.
Like Cody actually does have a background in knowing how to teach children how to do things, which is really key. And that's why I think us parents fail so much teaching our kids to do stuff. Whereas if we can get somebody, you've got not only a bike background, you're probably one of the better mechanics that I've met. I know you don't want me saying you're one of the best, but Cody's a very good bike mechanic, and everybody thinks that's an easy thing. It takes a special hand. There's very few people capable of being great mechanics, and Cody definitely falls in that category here. So you have that background, but then you have the educational background to really be able to then take that kind of bike knowledge and your riding experience and your shop experience, and then you can take that and then translate it to our mountain bikers and our riders.
Yeah, I mean, and I try not to toot my own horn. It's one of those, I've had some really awesome, unique experiences, from going through and learn, my thought was for me was I was going to be an art teacher, right? That's what from the time I was in, high school, middle school. Like I love drawing and I love working in teaching, right? It was really never necessarily always about like what I do. I always really enjoyed helping people and that satisfaction of being able to carry through it. And then, really like the passion of biking and just kind of that accumulation. Every time when we talk about this, it's like I almost always have to mention Jeff Powell, right? Because I mean, without Jeff Powell kind of giving me a tug, who's obviously,
Just retired from the Rockwood School District.
Again, teacher, Jeff, obviously
Very
taught
fast.
still very fast, still kicking butts, on podiums regularly.
Designs our enduro courses.
Yep. So he does a lot. He does a lot of the background stuff. There's just so many cool and unique people that help our cycling community, and he's definitely one of them. And without him kind of pulling that tug to help kind of formalize, because I was already doing stuff, but then when we started doing stuff through Rockwood, and then I decided to kind of like, well, guess what? We have something here. We need to do more of it. And now it's really gotten to be, a lot more diverse. I mean, we're helping get kids on bikes from first, second grade, and I mean, to the other extreme, we literally had kids that have been in the program. Some of these kids 4, 5, 6 years, and now we're at the BME national level, racing with professional mountain bikers, top 10s.
Right.
Top 10s nationally. So realize, one of the exciting things for me is, obviously, we've kind of created, teams and different ability levels within our riding. And obviously NICA has I have my NICA shirt on today. NICA has a big fit into this, without them. And, there's
NICA season just started.
NICA season just started,
And that's sixth grade and up, so.
And that really helps, because really, like, we were talking before we got started with the cameras, is like, well, what's the path, right? And for a lot of people, they don't know the path. Well, guess what? I'll sit here and look in the camera and say, well, here's a good path. You have a kid that's in first grade, second grade, guess what? Bring them to Wheels Up. They're going to learn all the same type of information, because we share and we teach the same common core and vocabulary as NICA. They'll get coached up, taught up. By the time they get to sixth grade, they're going to be all-stars when they show up into the NICA League. They're going to kick butt in the races, right? Because that's what happened when we started the NICA League. Most of my kids were over here, the Vipers with Rockwood. Guess what? Vipers just dominated that first year, right? And guess why? Most of them have been through, Wheels Up programming for several years prior to them getting into NICA. And now you're starting to see, some of these kids, like Riley, where NICA is cross country. It's great. It's that sixth grade through 12th grade. It gives them a race series that's designed around kids. That's a really, like, for me, that's a huge, and I tell anybody who's looking to get their kids into bikes, if they're looking to get into racing, right? There's a difference between going and riding bikes and racing bikes. One of the things that NICA does, bar none, the best, is the preparation for success of your youth rider. We spend, because I work with the league, as a coach supporter and a, help set up the courses and, site survey. I've been working with it since before NICA started here in Missouri. Is that the amount of time that goes into those courses for the kids to be successful. That to me, if I could give, not only are you getting great volunteers, great programming, good core education, but if you're getting your kid into bike racing, talk about a place that's inclusive and really gives the rider the best ability to go out and be successful in a race, because it's designed for kids. I mean, and it's marked for kids too. I mean, that's a big thing. Like, yes, do I have a Wheels Up XC program that these kids have been through Wheels Up or been through NICA, and now they're trying to ride at that next level? Either like the United Federation of Dirt, props to all those guys who put on all those races.
That was my second recommendation to my customer this morning,
So,
looking for something for his kid to do. He was like, my kid's 10, how do I get him racing? And I was like, first call Wheels Up MTB, because it's the same thing like with you, like you said, that we do here. I mean, that's really my answer for parents if they want to get into it, because I know a kid needs some coaching and stuff. So we first push everybody towards you. So.
Well, I mean, it's an odd niche, and there's not many people that are
We
doing
are
that
really
program.
lucky here,
So,
and that's people should they can go on Instagram or Facebook and find Wheels Up MTB. Do that. Yeah, we typically just push people to your website to actually get a hold of you. Cody's very responsive. Obviously, he's passionate about what he does here, so he'll get back with you and he'll go through his shop experience, or with his shop experience. It's that same thing of asking questions, finding out what the customer needs or what the client needs, and then developing a plan around them that's going to make sure they're successful, because that's all any of us want to do is we just want to get more people to ride bikes, and we know we have to make this accessible and enjoyable for them to be able to continue to do it. But yeah, I'm really stoked, and I think experienced mountain bikers, so the people who are still listening at this point, you still need to take courses too. Again, it's important that we are utilizing the resources we have here if we want them to stick around. So sign up for a course, you're going to learn something. Sign your kids up for a course. Maybe they actually will fall in love with mountain biking if you teach them how to do it successfully. Or at least when you come home after you go and ride, they'll think you're much cooler than they do now, where they think you just go and ride around with a bunch of old ladies all the time.
well, and I mean, but you bring out a good point. You're riding with your friends, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the core to mountain biking and core to cycling is like that you go to have fun, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, that is a core element to anything that we choose to go do with our lives, right? If we're not enjoying it, why are we doing it? And really with cycling, and Nike does a great job of it. I like to think Wheels Up does a good job with our teams and the weekly rides. You get these kids on Monday nights like, I want to go Monday night because I want to go ride with my buddies, right? Or our friends.
That
right?
was this dad's idea earlier. It was like, I need him to ride with other kids who like mountain biking, because he's on the precipice of really being into this.
Yes. Well, and if he goes out and he rides with his friends, basically, here's the best case scenario. Guess what? If you're a bike rider as a parent, you go drop your kid off. You get a 2-hour ride. And you're paying $20 to $25.
Yep.
You get to go do a 2-hour ride while your kid goes and rides with a professional coach that goes through and teaches them how to ride in a group, do all the trail organization, right? And then actually get skills and gets taught, when we do safety, like on how to do, emergencies and stuff like that. So there's a lot of stuff we're not just going for a 2-hour bike ride.
Right.
We're going out and we've built in a lot of the other needed facets of mountain biking that necessarily aren't like, are we doing skills like super heavy on those nights? No, but what do we have? We have skills clinics that collaborate with those weekly rides. So that's where we kind of point the kids to where, hey, if we need a rider who's really needing to work on the skills, we'll come to a level 1 skills clinic. And then come back and do the weekly rides, and your experience is going to get better.
Right.
You're going to get faster, right? And that's where, you see kids like Riley, prime example. Kid that came to me, bouncing around, just having fun on his bike.
You got a lot of work with him to go, though.
Might be endless work with Riley, but it's one of those things too. You talk about
or his little brother, who's come up behind him. Same thing. He started with the weekly rides, and then now he's done a couple of different enduros now.
Yeah, he just won the last enduro. Dustin won his age group. At the over at the MES over at St. Gnarls, which is really cool.
Yeah, and him and a bunch of his buddies are always running around Eureka, which is really neat to see. And that's something I'm thankful for having the Enduro series and having, the Enduro team. It's something for these younger kids to look forward to and to kind of strive for when they're riding their bike around and stuff, because they get to be like Riley or any of the other guys doing the Enduro. So it gives them a reason to come into the shop, to put their full face helmet on and pedal up the hill to get to the Eureka Mountain Bike Park. It's really motivating for them, and it's cool to watch and see even the younger guys. So I'm glad the Monday night rides are going to be back. That's really necessary and a very unique thing that we have here in our area. So people should take advantage of that and signing up for clinics, whether you're an adult or a kid. All they got to do is go up to Wheels Up MTB, and that's it. Oops, no, I'm ringing. So that must mean that we are at our time limit for tonight. So yeah, thanks, Cody. People go to Wheels Up MTB, search that out, and yeah, if you have any other questions, reach out to Cody, or you can always stop in the shop and we can tell you how to get a hold of him. So appreciate you.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Thanks, buddy.
thanks, man.